See who I am in the cameras. You and I looking as that as
I like this shit. I like this shit.
Just don't wait for another. I had it wrong when I could tell it was murder. Slowing me down, but you're not taking me further.
So, Daniel Kirkland, or his rap alias Kirkland, is a Canberra-raised rapper. He studied IR at the ANU before dropping out and has gone into a career in hip-hop, with songs attracting hundreds of thousands of listens, as well as a shout-out from T-Pain. His upcoming mixtape, Success Stains, is set to release soon. Kirkland, thank you for coming on the show.
Great to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
What kind of influences are around you? Are they local ones, or is it international influences that are pushing you towards rap?
Yeah, man. I think it's always been local for me. I mean, I grew up here in Canberra. My two older cousins were like deeply embedded in music. One was touring with Jason Derulo and Flowrider when I was in like year 3. The other was breakdancing and rapping and doing stuff with Culture Break here in Canberra. So those guys, like, I really looked up to. And fast forward like 10 years after that early period, I got in touch with Citizen K here in Canberra. And I think I've just always been around incredible people here doing like really strong things in the city and being shown that you don't really have to like move away to achieve what you want to achieve. And I think it's just become a really great insular creative community here that I've loved being a part of, and the energy here is just dope. So I think it's seeing people that have stayed around the city and chosen to like invest more into building this into what I think is becoming a really unique culture and unique scene. And we're just keen to show that more to like, you know, the cities in Sydney and Melbourne and what we're doing.
I think when you think of cities like Sydney and Melbourne, there's a lot more people. There's a sense that there's a lot more happening. Do you think people do underestimate the Canberra scene?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think firstly you have to like, with anything you want to achieve, you have to like be able to see other people doing it and doing it on the level that you want to be doing it. So I think if you personally like can't find that here, you might have to go elsewhere. But I was able to find it here in the city, so I was able to stay and nurture my own direction after seeing people doing it here. As far as like scenes and getting into the circle, I mean, Canberra, as you know, you're always 6 degrees away from someone that you want to know. So, I mean, I think just putting out word and vocalizing that you want to get into these scenes, you know, there's always great creative people here, man, doing whether it's photography or fashion or music or whatever. There's so many great creative people around here. It's quite easy to crack into scenes. And if you are a musician listening, just looking to start out, like even just going to venues and going to local shows, like Transit's been popping off. I've met a lot of great emerging artists there recently I didn't know about. And just listening to who's working with who, like, I look at like what bands are in Canberra, who they're collaborating with, who's mixing their stuff, who's working on the production side. And yeah, I think once you find like one person in that scene, you start to realize that we're all super connected and super close with what we do. And then once you discover that, Canberra's just like the most beautiful, supportive. It's just a really strong, beautiful family ties type thing here, man. It's dope.
Yeah. And I think it is all about the culture, because it's a culture that I think really pushes you creatively.
Yeah.
It's really hard to actually be an artist in isolation of other artists.
Absolutely.
Because when you're in that circle, that's where you're drawing influence and inspiration and really putting your best foot forward. How old were you, would you say, when you started really engaging in things like these writing camps and developing yourself as a musician?
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, I mean, firstly, it was like, I think it came from a really pure place, because I just used to write songs all the time when I was a kid and no one knew about it. Like I said, I was really influenced by my older cousins, but I would just write songs for the sake of writing songs, and no one would even know that I liked music. I was very private about it. I was a very like introverted creative at the time. So I went all the way through like primary school and high school, just like obsessively writing songs all the time, but no one knew about it. And then I went traveling, came back and kind of looked at what I was spending my time on and realized that music was like a real huge part of that. And I was like, damn, I've invested a lot of time into getting semi-good at this. I need to explore this more. And then I think once I started to like vocalize that I liked music and I wanted to rap, and I actually dropped a song, which was like originally like a Mac Miller cover like 7 years ago. Once I'd started doing that, then it was like, I don't know, I'm kind of like an all or nothing person. So once I started, I was like, I'm all in on this. Like, I'm just doing this no matter what. And, you know, you mentioned the financial side. Sure, that's hella difficult.
Yeah.
But man, if you love what you do, like you just do it regardless. You know what I mean? It's not really a choice. And I do think things are kind of planned out for me in that way. Like, it's not even my choice sometimes. It's just like something shows me like a deep level of passion and connectivity. I have to do it. Like, I can't ignore that. It's something deep and intuitive and beautiful. And like, you know, I'm constantly trying to look for those synchronicities and signs as to where to go next creatively, and who to trust in and who to invest in. And you know what I mean? Like, just make big life decisions based off that intuition, I guess.
Like, I think about some of the songs I shared around my friends. Like, I look back and I'm like, God, that is so cringe.
For sure.
What was that like personally for you? Like, releasing that first mix and like releasing that first cover?
So the reason I put out my first song was because, long story short, in 2014 I went to a show in Canberra where I think it was Hobson opening for 360.
Yeah.
And at the time, Illmind 5's just come out. I'm like a giant fan. So I went to the show just to see Hobson because I was a huge fan of his. Anyway, long story short, I go to the show, I walk in, and DJ Hopper walks past me. He was Hobson's DJ at the time, I think still is. And I'm like, Hopper, what's up, man? I'm a big fan of your work. And we walk outside together, and the venue's like, dude, if you walk out now, you like can't come in, you'll miss the whole show. And I was like, whatever, like I love these guys so much, I'm just gonna chat to them and see what's up. So anyway, so Hopper goes like, what do you do? And I'm like, bro, I'm a rapper. And I haven't put out music. I haven't told anyone this at this point. This is the first time I've vocalized to anyone in my life that I'm a rapper. And he's like, oh, dope, bro. We did this thing on tour. We film local people freestyling on camera and put it on our Facebook page. Yeah, do you want to rap? And I was like, yeah, sure, bro. Yeah, let's do that. And so he literally pulls out a camera and puts the light on. He's like, you ready to go? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm trying to like remember verses I've written and stuff. I had like a Pete Rock freestyle I wrote, and I was like, all right, I'll spit that. And then he puts the camera on. He goes, all right, 3, 2, 1. He goes to record, and he's like, oh, bro, the memory card was backstage. We can't film this. Yeah. And I was like, oh, dude, no problem. I'm like inside, I'm like relieved as hell. Yeah. And he's like, but dude, send me your music and we'll chat and stuff. And this guy's from LA. He's like part of the rap crews that I'm a fan of. So I'm like, all right, bet. So I literally like I can't go back inside the venue. So I call my cousin. I'm like, Shaq, bro, I need to show you what I'm working on. I actually rap. And then in the space of a month, I went to Melbourne, recorded a song. Kojo mixed and recorded it. K, that is. And I put that song out just to send it to Hopper. Yeah. So I didn't even like think about, this is the first time I'm putting things out. Like, what are people going to think? I was like, no, this has to be out. It has to be public. Got a couple of thousand plays on SoundCloud, and I sent it to him, and then never heard back. But the point was that like I did that to try and achieve some bigger objective, which never panned out. But it forced me to like start releasing it. From there, it was just kind of like, all right, we've started this now. Like, let's just keep doing it. And I don't know that I was necessarily thinking about what people thought at that point because I was trying to achieve something bigger.
What is your like? I think if you don't mind talking about this, like your personal journey. Being with the lifestyle of a musician, and all the vices that come with that. Yeah. Has that been something you've ever struggled with, or is it something you're mindful of going into music as a career?
Yeah. With that side of things, man, I don't know. The longer you do this, the more you realize why people do what they do. And if you do it because you really love this shit and you love playing shows and love creating with great people, partying and stuff's fun when you get dubs, but like it's not why we're doing it. Like I don't do it to stay out of clubs all night. Like that's not why I'm here. So yeah, I mean you just kind of identify people's motives and be around the right people, and that's fine from there. But bro, we turn up and we play festivals, bro. We turn all the way up. Like we celebrate those dubs, but you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it's a balance, right? Yeah.
What moments I think for you has been probably the most striking when you're playing festivals and you're playing shows? Is there anything that is really memorable for you? When you think back as your career so far, like what has stood out to you as like that time you've sort of stood in front of a crowd and been like, wow, I've actually really done something here?
Yeah. I think the first time that happened was when we got Groovin' in 2019. I won the Triple J competition and played the main stage and like had, bro, like all my close, I don't know how I did this, but like 20 of my close homies in, like VIP passes. One was my videographer, one was my content guy, one was my manager, whatever. You know what I mean? Like all the homies got in and my mum was there, like everyone was on stage, and it was just like, yeah, it was like I deeply manifested that, and like having to be able to experience that with like the people I'm closest with was what made that experience the best. So if I think of like anything like that moments, it's always with the people I'm sharing it with, like sharing that with my homie Josh, who I was drumming with, 4 years prior to us doing that, and then getting to do that, and the other festivals we did pre-COVID, like, yeah, man, it's always about who you share it with. So I always think about that, and I call him and I'm like, remember this? And he's like, oh, dude, and we're sharing that memory together, and that's always like the best part for sure.
I wonder, like, what your experiences, like growing up in Canberra has been like, and how that's translated to your songwriting and the sort of concepts and content you actually put into your songs. Yeah. Which, I imagine is pretty different growing up in Canberra compared to, like Atlanta or New York City or Compton or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, you said it, man. Like, you're not around any big artists. All of my influence was coming from America directly. And when I was youngest, my early experiences of hip-hop from like maybe like 8 to 10 years old was, Nelly, Diddy, Yin Yang Twins, Murphy Lee, that very flashy, materialistic hip hop you talked about. And yeah, like glorifying drugs, which is still something I, have a bit of trouble with. I explored that because my uncle he died as a heroin addict. So my background with being around drugs is very different to like it being glorified and being dope and fun and partying. So when I explore those things in the music, it's a lot more for me to kind of process my own relationship with drugs and like if I'm similar to him at all. And like it's always from like a much more just contemplated perspective than like being like, I'm out partying and shit, But yeah, I think like, Yeah, it started to change for me because, like I said, I was really absorbing into that energy and into like, you know, cars and girls because a young kid, like, who wouldn't be like,
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah, yeah.
dope, it looks dope.
Yeah.
Nelly's like at a mansion with like 40 women just like twerking and shit. You're like, this is fire.
Yeah.
But then it turned for me when my cousin gave me Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor when I was a kid. Everyone knows the story, but I got that record when I was like 12 years old, and hearing the way he told stories and the way he approached creativity, had like 8 different meanings in the song, the instrumental on that album, the whole double meaning of kick push, like the whole intricacy, metaphor, lyricism, and storytelling. I hadn't experienced that before. And then from there, funnily enough, going backwards, I went on to like, you know, Nas and Illmatic and those kind of records, and really understood the art form and storytelling side of hip hop. And that's what got me obsessed with it. And I started writing hip hop exclusively from then on. And that's kind of where it turned into more of a storytelling route. And I actually explored, I put out a song in 2016 called Rise, where I kind of explored 2 perspectives of me. I was raised as a Christian. I go to church with my grandfather every week, and I was really raised to uphold those values. But as I got a bit older and hip hop started becoming more of a thing, I felt like I was being pulled to what you talked about before, about the material, flashy side, and being so caught up in that and being like, this is fire, and that pulling me away from like the upbringing that I had as a kid. So in that song, I try and explore, you know, the materialistic side and the consequence of it as well, because I don't think that any of that has longevity. Particularly as an art form.
I'm thinking, you know, if you do well in music, and I'm sure aspirationally, you know, like you want Success Stains to take off and do as well as it possibly can. Like, have you ever had that thought of how deeply your personal life might be affected if, you know, like you become like a Kid Laroi, like when you have like 40 million people like listening to you like constantly, like that's a pretty dramatic change.
Hugely dramatic change.
In how you live. Like,
sure.
Is that something you've sort of thought about, or?
Sure. I mean, I think that level is definitely possible. I don't think it's out of reach. I do think that just from what I've seen in people I know, I do think success brings out more of the person you are than make you into something you're not. And I believe that, yeah, I just try to stay true to that. Whenever I have any sort of success or dubs or anything like that, I just try to keep my head in check and be like, I'm here doing what I love with the right people, and that will always be a constant. And not get too caught up on like, yeah, I've said this a lot, but like...
Such a good quote of all. I'm here doing what I love with the right people.
Yeah,
you know,
what I love with the people I love.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I love with who I love. That's what I'd say,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's nice.
And if that's a constant, like, you're good. And that's why you see, you know, like I watched a Wiz Khalifa documentary yesterday where like he enlisted his dad as his business manager, his cousin as his merch manager, and they've been doing this shit for like 15 years now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a reason that you get to that point, and you have the same people around you, because it keeps you true, I think.
What are those aspirations actually for Success Stains?
For everything, the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, man, it's the first time I've created art where I've just been like, man, this could change everything in Australia, internationally. It's just fire. I'm just really proud of it. I've worked with a lot of great people, and no one's really like tackling that new wave kind of punk alt sound in Australia yet. I've seen a couple of acts like, you know, making moves and trying to do it, but I haven't seen anyone nail it yet, and I think I can be the first to do that. And not to say that, you know, I think there will be, when it first comes out, there'll be an initial like, oh, he's jumping on like a punk trend or some shit. But the more you hear it and how authentic and how like vibrationally how it is, the more it'll become clear that I've actually found my lane in music.
Daniel, it's an awesome story. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. I'm going to leave our listeners with a release from Success Stains, your latest single, Another. If you want to hear more from Kirkland, that's Kirkland with 2 Ds on Spotify. Check him out.
Keep acting like I'm gonna be stronger. Every night I keep facing my karma, and I just don't know if I'll ever get enough. I think I need to wait a while. Just don't forget about me, and I'ma tread another mile. Just don't wait for another. I had to run when I could tell it was murder, slowing me down, but yet not taking me further. I don't care enough if I hurt ya. I'm too scared to take on another. I had to run when I could tell it was murder,